What happens when an actor gives the defining television performance of a decade, but it takes Hollywood almost 20 years to even notice him? If you look at the pop culture landscape right now, there is no villain more iconic, more terrifying, or more heavily meaned than Homelander.
Homelander?
And the man behind the cape, Anthony Starr, is pulling off a magic trick of acting. He isn't playing a superhero, and he isn't playing a supervillain. He is playing a deeply insecure, terrified, and needy child who just so happens to be trapped inside the body of a god. He can shift from a charming, all-American smile to a dead-eyed, homicidal glare with nothing but a millimeter twitch of his jaw. It is a masterclass in micro-expressions. But Anthony Starr didn't just wake up one day and become the scariest man on television. Before he was laser-eyeing people in half, he was a working-class actor in New Zealand, grinding through soap operas, taking brutal beatings on a cult classic action show, and actively trying to avoid the audition that would eventually change his life. He is an actor who built his career on taking physical and emotional beatings, slowly mastering the art of duality, and proving that sometimes the best way to make an audience fear you is to make them laugh first. This is the story of an actor who ground his way from the bottom of the industry to the very top, armed with nothing but raw talent, relentless endurance, and the most unpredictable face in Hollywood. This is Anthony Starr. Anthony Starr never really planned on being an actor. Born in Wellington, New Zealand in 1975, he didn't grow up doing youth theater or dreaming of the Hollywood sign. He was a normal, active kid who spent his time doing martial arts, surfing, and snowboarding. For a while, he thought he might want to be a police officer, which is ironic, considering how much of his career would be spent playing criminals and corrupt authority figures. It wasn't until he was 18 years old that he decided to take a drama class, mostly just to see what it was all about, and almost instantly, he realized he had a knack for it. But breaking into the industry in New Zealand in the 1990s was a very specific kind of grind. It is a small market, meaning you don't get to be picky. You take the jobs that are there. His early career was a revolving door of bit parts and guest appearances on whatever was filming in the country at the time. In 1995, he landed a small role on Xena, Warrior Princess, which was essentially a rite of passage for literally every single working actor in New Zealand at the time. He played a centaur named Mesas. It wasn't exactly glamorous, but it was set experience. He popped up in medical dramas like Shortland Street, which is the legendary New Zealand soap opera that has served as the training ground for massive talents like Carl Urban and Taika Waititi. He did theater, he did commercials, he did whatever paid the bills. In the early 2000s, he started getting slightly meatier roles. He appeared in Mercy Peak, a rural drama where he played a recurring character named Todd, and he had a solid run on Street Legal, the police drama. But none of these were star-making turns. He was a working actor, which is a massive achievement in itself, but he wasn't a leading man yet. And then came 2004, which brought his first real taste of international cinema, though it was in a movie you have probably never seen. He had a supporting role in Without a Paddle, that early 2000s comedy starring Seth Green, Matthew Willard, and Dax Shepard. The movie was filmed in New Zealand to save money on wilderness locations, and Starr played a guy named Billy. It reviewed terribly, but it was a Hollywood production, and it gave him a glimpse of what the bigger machine looked like. But his actual breakthrough wasn't going to come from Hollywood. It was going to come from his own backyard, in a show that would make him an absolute superstar in New Zealand, and serve as the ultimate training ground for everything he would do later. In 2005, Starr landed the lead role in a show called Outrageous Fortune. The series followed the West family, a group of career criminals who decide to go straight after the patriarch is sent to prison. But here is the catch. Starr didn't just play the lead role, he played two of them. He was cast as identical twins, Jethro and Van West, and these characters could not have been more different. Jethro was a sharp, manipulative, and deeply cynical lawyer. He was calculated and cold. Van, on the other hand, was a massive stoner, a lovable idiot, and the comedic heart of the show. Playing twins on television is a technical nightmare. It requires you to shoot a scene as one character, memorize the timing and spacing, go to the makeup trailer, change everything about your physical appearance, come back and act opposite nothing, hoping the timing lines up in the edit. It is exhausting, but Starr didn't just pull it off. He absolutely nailed it. He created two distinct physicalities for the brothers. Jethro stood up straight, moved with purpose, and spoke with a sharp, biting cadence. Van slouched, constantly looked confused, and had this loose, almost floppy energy to him. You could put a still frame of the show on screen, and without even hearing them speak, you knew exactly which brother Starr was playing just by looking at his eyes. Outrageous Fortune ran for 6 seasons, becoming one of the most successful and beloved shows in New Zealand television history. Starr won Best Actor at the Qantas Television Awards multiple times, and the country absolutely loved him. This was a massive turning point. Playing Jethro and Van forced Starr to learn how to compartmentalize entirely different psychologies within the same body. It taught him how to flip a switch from dramatic intensity to goofy comedy in a matter of seconds. It was the exact skill set he would eventually use to play a superhero who presents a perfect, charming facade to the public, while hiding a broken, homicidal maniac underneath. But his outrageous fortune wrapped up in 2010, Starr found himself at a crossroads. He had conquered New Zealand television. He was arguably the biggest star in the country. But if he wanted to push his career further, he had to leave. So, he packed up and moved to Australia, essentially starting over as a small fish in a bigger pond. In 2011, he landed a role in the Australian police drama Rush, playing a senior sergeant. The following year, he starred in a show called Tricky Business. They were solid roles, but they weren't exactly pushing him to his limits. However, 2012 brought a film that started to get him noticed by international casting directors. He starred in Wish You Were Here, a psychological thriller alongside Joel Edgerton and Teresa Palmer. The film follows a group of friends who go on vacation to Cambodia, but only 3 of them come back. Starr played the guy who goes missing. The film reviewed incredibly well. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, and critics singled out the intense, grounded performances of the cast. It was the exact calling card Starr needed to get his foot in the door in America. And that door finally opened in 2013, though it opened in the most ridiculous, painful, and bloody way imaginable. Cinemax was casting a new action series called Banshee. The premise was completely absurd. A master thief is released from prison, tracks down his ex-lover in a small Amish town in Pennsylvania, and after a bizarre bar fight, ends up stealing the identity of the town's incoming sheriff, Lucas Hood. The show needed a leading man who could handle deeply emotional, traumatic character work, while also surviving some of the most brutal, grueling, and realistic fight choreography ever put on television. The story of how Starr got the role is legendary. He was in Australia completely exhausted from auditioning, and his representative sent him the script for Banshee. He didn't want to do it, and he thought the premise sounded a bit silly, and he was frustrated with the whole Hollywood casting process. But his team pushed him. So he set up a camera in his living room, had his girlfriend read the opposite lines, and did a tape. He was grumpy, he was annoyed, and he didn't put any effort into trying to look polished or handsome. He just spat the lines out with pure, unfiltered frustration. He sent the tape in and went to bed, figuring he would never hear from them again. The creator of the show, Jonathan Tropper, saw the tape and immediately knew they had their guy. That raw, exhausted anger was exactly who Lucas Hood was. The story of how Starr got the role is legendary. He was in Australia completely exhausted from auditioning, and his representative sent him the script for Banshee. He didn't want to do it, and he thought the premise sounded a bit silly, and he was frustrated with the whole Hollywood casting process. But his team pushed him, so he set up a camera in his living room, had his girlfriend read the opposite lines, and did a tape. He was grumpy, he was annoyed, and he didn't put any effort into trying to look polished or handsome. He just spat the lines out with pure, unfiltered frustration. He sent the tape in and went to bed, figuring he would never hear from them again. The creator of the show, Jonathan Tropper, saw the tape and immediately knew they had their guy. That raw, exhausted anger was exactly who Lucas Hood was. There are episodes of Banshee that feel like feature-length action movies. In Season 1, there is an episode where Hood fights a massive, heavily modified MMA fighter. The fight is incredibly long, bloody, and desperate. In another episode, he fights an albino giant in a prison flashback that is genuinely hard to watch. But amidst all the blood and broken bones, Starr was doing incredibly nuanced character work. Lucas Hood is a man completely disconnected from his own identity. He doesn't even have a real name. He is carrying the trauma of 15 years in a brutal prison, and Starr played him with this heavy, haunted silence. He didn't have many monologues. He acted with his posture. He carried his shoulders like they weighed 1,000 pounds. He used a sharp, piercing stare that lets you know he was calculating every exit in the room. Banshee ran for 4 seasons and became a massive cult hit. Critics loved it. But because it was on Cinemax, it never got the massive Emmy recognition or mainstream hype it deserved. Still, for the people who watched it, Anthony Starr was a revelation. He proved he could carry a massive American production, endure unbelievable physical punishment, and command the screen without saying a word. When Banshee ended in 2016, you would think Hollywood would be lining up to hand him blockbusters. He had the jawline, the acting chops, and the action credentials. But the industry didn't quite know what to do with him. He was a character actor trapped in a leading man's body. Later that year, he landed a lead role in a CBS mystery series called American Gothic, playing the estranged, creepy older brother of a wealthy Boston family hiding a dark secret. He was great in it, using that unsettling, unblinking stare he perfected in Banshee to make everyone uncomfortable. But the show didn't find an audience and was canceled after just 1 season. For the next couple of years, he floated around doing smaller projects. He was in an Australian film called After the Waterfall, and a few other minor roles. But nothing was clicking. It felt like he might just be the guy from Banshee forever. A cult favorite, but never a global superstar. And then, in 2018, the script for The Boys landed on his desk. At the time, superhero fatigue was just starting to set in. The MCU was dominating the box office, and the idea of a dark, satirical take on superheroes sounded interesting, but risky. The casting directors were looking for Homelander, the leader of the Seven, a character who is essentially Superman if Superman was a narcissistic, sociopathic man-child created in a corporate lab. Once again, Starr didn't want to read for it. He looked at the description, a blonde, blue-eyed, all-American hero, and thought, I am a dark-haired guy from New Zealand. They are going to cast some 6'4" Henry Cavill look-alike. It's a waste of my time. He was actually filming a movie in New Mexico at the time, completely exhausted, and his reps practically had to force him to put a tape together. Annoyed, he went back to his trailer, set up his phone, read the scene as quickly as he could just to get it over with, and fired it off to his team. He didn't think about the character, he didn't prepare, he just read the words with this flippant, dismissive arrogance. And that was exactly what the producers were looking for. Showrunner Eric Kripke saw the tape and was floored. Everyone else auditioning for Homelander was playing him like a typical twirling mustache villain. Starr played him like a bored, annoyed celebrity who genuinely believed he was better than everyone else in the room. It was terrifyingly real. He was flown out to test for the role, and the moment he put the suit on, it was over. He was Homelander. When The Boys premiered in 2019, it was an absolute grenade thrown into the middle of pop culture. It was violent, hilarious, politically sharp, and deeply cynical. But the entire show hinged on one thing. Homelander had to work. If he was just a generic bad guy, the show falls apart. Starr took the character and built a masterpiece of psychological horror. The brilliant choice Starr made was realizing that Homelander is physically the strongest person on the planet, but emotionally, he is the weakest. He was raised in a sterile lab without a mother, completely starved of genuine human affection. He desperately needs people to love him, but he despises them for being weak. Starr played this contradiction brilliantly. Let's talk about his face, because what Anthony Starr does with his facial muscles on this show deserves to be studied in acting classes. Homelander is a corporate mascot, so he constantly has to present this glowing, confident, all-American smile to the public, but Starr found a way to smile with his mouth while letting his eyes go completely dead. You can physically watch the mask slip. In any given scene, he will be delivering a PR-friendly line, and his jaw will clench, just a tiny, barely noticeable flex of the masseter muscle. His cheek will twitch, his eyes will dart. He projects the energy of a bomb whose timer is broken. You never know if he has 10 seconds or 10 years before he explodes. It creates an unbelievable amount of tension. Anytime Homelander enters a room, the air gets sucked out of the scene. The audience and the other characters are just holding their breath, waiting to see if he is going to offer them a compliment or laser their head off. One of the defining moments of the first season is the airplane scene. Homelander and Queen Maeve intercept a hijacked commercial airliner, but the controls are destroyed. Maeve wants to save the passengers, but Homelander realizes it's a PR nightmare if they only save a few and leave the rest to die. So he decides to let the plane crash. The way Starr plays this scene is chilling. There is no evil laughter, there is just cold, clinical irritation. The passengers are begging him, and he snaps at them to quiet down, waving his hands like an annoyed teacher dealing with rowdy children. He laser eyes a man just to make them step back. When he tells them, "Stay back," his voice cracks with genuine frustration. Not because he is sad they are dying, but because they are inconveniencing him. It is one of the most disturbing scenes in modern television, and Starr anchors it perfectly. As the show progressed into its second and third seasons, Starr only pushed the performance further into weird, uncomfortable territory. He leaned into Homelander's bizarre psychological fixations, most notably his Oedipal obsession with Madeline Stillwell and his infamous fixation on milk. There is a scene in Season 2 where he warms up a bottle of breast milk and drinks it, maintaining eye contact with the camera. It is repulsive, hilarious, and deeply sad all at once. Starr commits to these bizarre moments with absolute zero vanity. He is not afraid to look pathetic. In fact, he revels in it. In Season 3, Homelander's mind starts to fully fracture, leading to a scene where he talks to himself in the mirror. It is a brilliant callback to his days on Outrageous Fortune, acting opposite himself. One version of Homelander is the terrified, needy child, and the reflection is the cold, emotionless psychopath taking control. Starr differentiates the two personalities perfectly, shifting his voice, his posture, and his eye movements. It is an acting tour de force. Despite universal critical acclaim and an entire internet treating him as the ultimate meme, Starr was famously snubbed by the Emmys for the first few seasons. People couldn't believe it. The problem is that genre television, shows with exploding heads, laser eyes, and deep-sea superhero weirdness, rarely get taken seriously by traditional award voters. But the cultural impact of his performance was undeniable. Homelander memes took over the internet. A clip of him standing in a dark theater, breathing heavily while staring blankly, became the universal reaction GIF for deep existential dread. Another clip of him forcing a fake smile as the camera zooms in on his terrified dead eyes became a viral sensation. Starr created the defining villain of the internet age. He manages to be the funniest character on the show, while simultaneously being the most terrifying. And while The Boys took up a massive chunk of his time in the 2020s, Starr didn't want to get rusty with other roles. In 2023, he took on 2 film projects that showed he was finally starting to get the Hollywood movie recognition he deserved. The first was Cobweb, a genuinely creepy horror film directed by Samuel Bodine. The movie follows a young boy who starts hearing tapping from inside his bedroom walls and begins to suspect his parents are hiding a terrible secret. Starr plays the boy's father, Mark. This role was a brilliant piece of casting because it weaponized his Homelander energy in a grounded, domestic setting. As Mark, Starr plays a strict, overly protective dad, but he infuses the performance with this simmering, unpredictable rage. He stalks through the dark hallways of the house with a terrifying stillness. He forces a smile at his son that looks entirely unnatural. It is a slow burn, psychological horror performance that proved he could take that intense, terrifying screen presence and apply it outside of a superhero suit. That same year, he appeared in Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, starring alongside Jake Gyllenhaal and Dar Salim. It is a tense, grounded military thriller about an American soldier and his Afghan interpreter. Starr plays a supporting role as Eddie Parker, a private military contractor who helps coordinate a dangerous rescue mission. It isn't a massive, flashy role with monologues, but it is exactly the kind of grounded, serious work that shows directors he can play normal, competent humans. He fit perfectly into Guy Ritchie's fast-paced masculine world, showing up, delivering the exposition, and bringing a sense of grizzled authority to the screen. It was a stark contrast to his unhinged television work, and a reminder that he is, at his core, just an incredibly solid, versatile working actor. And that is really what makes Antony Starr so fascinating. If you watch interviews with him, he is nothing like the characters he plays. He is laid back, constantly joking, wildly self-deprecating, and fiercely protective of his privacy. He still has a thick New Zealand accent. He treats acting like a blue-collar job. You show up, you hit your marks, you give it absolutely everything you have, and then you go home. He doesn't buy into the Hollywood method acting mythos. When they yell cut on the boys, he stops being the homicidal god, cracks a joke, and goes to craft services. He understands that the best acting comes from preparation and technical control, not from torturing yourself off camera. Looking at his career, it is almost impossible to chart a normal path. He spent a decade being the most famous man in his home country, playing comedic stoner twins. He flew across the world to spend 4 years getting his face kicked in on a Cinemax action show that barely anyone watched at the time. And then, right when he thought he might just quietly fade into character actor obscurity, he accidentally recorded an audition tape out of sheer annoyance and ended up creating the defining television villain of his generation. He took a character that easily could have been a one-dimensional evil Superman parody and turned him into a pathetic, terrifying, deeply human monster. Antony Starr proves that sometimes the longest, weirdest roads make the best actors. He didn't get handed fame in his 20s, he had to work for it. He built a career on taking hits, waiting for the right moment, and knowing exactly what to do with his face when the camera finally zoomed in. He doesn't need to scream to scare you. He doesn't need special effects to intimidate you. He just needs to look at you, let his jaw clench, and let his smile drop. And that is why, long after The Boys eventually ends, Antony Starr is going to be haunting our screens for a very long time. So there you have it, Antony Starr's career and all of his best performances. What's your favorite role of his? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe. And until next time, have a good one.